And on top of all the above arguments, we could be facing similar challenges as in the past any time soon. And some will also argue that the climate is warming once more. If one looks into the temperatures around the dawn of agriculture 12,000 years ago, one can detect that a continuous temperature rise follows the developing agriculture in close association, and not the other way around, that agriculture is a consequence of rising, supposedly more favorable, temperatures, as is assumed by most. Most people just don't think much about it, but there is still no fitting explanation for the many so-called ice ages and interglacials, like the Holocene we are in right now, for the last thousands of years, roughly since after the so-called Younger Dryas. A fitting explanation for the many so-called ice ages and interglacials is the one that we will further elaborate here and now. As said just before, if one looks into the temperatures around the dawn of agriculture 12,000 years ago, one can detect that a continuous temperature rise follows the developing agriculture in close association. These associate really well, even if the dawn should have been later like 10,000 years ago. If one looks into the temperatures around the medieval agricultural revolution, one can detect that a continuous temperature rise follows the developing agriculture once again, and again not the other way around, as most assume. In central England, temperatures started to fall already before the turn of the 13th century. The association of agriculture with temperature rise is clear once more, since the medieval agricultural revolution took place in the period from the year 1050 until 1300. If one looks into the temperatures around the Iron Age agricultural revolution, one can detect that a continuous temperature rise follows the developing agriculture once again, and again not the other way around, as most assume. The three prehistoric ages were the Stone Age, Bronze Age, and Iron Age. The Iron Age lasted from roughly 1200 to 500 BCE, and its dates differ by world region. The Hittites in Anatolia, at the heads of the Tigris and Euphrates River, just above where Göbekli Tepe and similars were situated, and which is now modern-day Turkey, are believed to have been the first known people to make iron tools. The temperature rise is less clear in the Iron Age. However, there are peaks above the medium of the time, at the beginning and end of the Iron Age. All these above three periods of agricultural revolutions were followed by collapses, and there also were some temporary collapses during these three periods of agricultural revolutions. These collapses and or dips of cultures present drops in temperatures, because after agriculture suffers collapse, trees and forests can at least somehow recover, and cool the region and or the whole planet, with their biotic pump effect. There is a clear cooling period after the significant and widespread Black Death, where the medieval warm period transitions into what is called the Little Ice Age. The 8.2 cold event seems to coincide with a collapse or retraction of agriculture, this after the initial expansion or dawn of the Neolithic agricultural revolution. Perhaps Göbekli Tepe and similars in the region, part of the Fertile Crescent, represent the dawn 12 to 13,000 years ago, and other much wider and clearer cultures would only really pick up after the 8.2 cold event. A collapse of Göbekli Tepe and similars is detected in direct association. The collapse of Göbekli Tepe was from 9600 to 8200 BCE, and it is exactly then that the 8.2 cold event unfolded. Resuming, there are two clear and for existence essential associations at work. 1. There is the first and clear temporal and spatial association between the expansion of agriculture, on one hand, and warming, on the other hand, as well as the inverse association between collapse of agriculture and cooling. 2. There is the second and clear temporal and spatial and consequential and mutual reinforcing association between the collapse of agriculture and the associated cooling, on one hand, with death and collapse of the massively grown, and to disease more vulnerable populations, and their eventual new economies and cultures, and epidemic or pandemic diseases, on the other hand. Cooling during or as a consequence of collapse can and probably will have a double component. A. Reducing of agriculture causes a reduction of warming by agriculture. B. Natural regeneration of forests causes climate regulation, and in cases temperatures are too hot, and weather is too dry, the regenerating forests will have a cooling effect. The same way expansion of agriculture can and probably will have a double component too, but this time the other way around. Expansion of agriculture, certainly so in the past and on a larger scale, causes deforestation, and loss of its climate regulation effect, amongst other its characteristic control of droughts, sometimes generalizing called the biotic pump effect of forests, especially continental-sized tropical forests like the Amazon forest. By the way, this clear association between agriculture and temperature is much stronger than the much more focused on assumed historical association between carbon dioxide and temperature, but this remark certainly does not dispense carbon dioxide as a possible important factor in the whole equation. Since agroforests are forests, and are cause of climate regulation and eventual cooling, the action plan we propose would regulate climate and, depending on the scale of the events, eventually also global climate. Despite the demonstrated clear and historical association, as well as importance of forests, we modern humans seem to be totally blind to this association and the importance of agroforests, their associated deep and carbon-rich forest soils, and also all other forests, including highly productive agriculture, especially with perennials in the tropics and subtropics. The importance of all these forests and vegetations is the subject of several also important videos of ours related to very important and informative NASA research that is related to the removal of at least half of all emitted carbon dioxide from the Earth's atmosphere. This blindness, as well as the involved possible causes of this enigmatic human blindness, are the subject of again other videos that also mention the methylation of modern humans' DNA and the obvious hybridization they underwent in temporal association with risings of agriculture and/or agricultural revolutions.